So in this video, we're going to go over the area of some basic shapes that we need to know in order for our LANTITE assessment, or whether you're in the earlier years of secondary, this would be helpful as well. So if we take our first shape being a rectangle, you can see here that I've got the formula area equals length times width, but I'm trying to use this diagram to show you visually what's going on. So here we've got a rectangle which is 4 lots of 2. So you can see here that every square is 1 centimeter squared because it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So if we count the squares, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. However, in these diagrams, it's not going to be very often that you're actually given these squares. You'll just be given the outline. So we can say that the area for any rectangle, or a square by that matter, is length times width. So for here, all we would need to do is say that we're going to do length times width, which is 4 times 2, and that would give us 8 centimeters. Don't forget the squared as well, because this is a 2D problem. We're looking at the second dimension. So this little 2 here represents that it's the second dimension, it is squared. Let's go have a look at some other shapes. So we can use our knowledge of a rectangle to help us find the area of a triangle as well. So if we cut this rectangle in half, you can see here we now have a triangle. So the diagonal line halves the area of the rectangle, forming 2 triangles. And this is why this formula for the area of a triangle is the same as a rectangle, but you must remember to times by a half or divide by 2. So you do the same formula basically as before, width times length or base times height, but you must remember to half it based on this diagram above. So let's do a couple of examples. So here we have a right angle triangle, and if we use the formula where we do 3 times 4, that would be a rectangle, which would be the entire thing. So 3 times 4 would give us 12, but we must remember to half it. So it's a half times 4 times 3, or 3 times 4. It doesn't actually matter what order, because when you multiply 2 numbers, the order doesn't matter. That's not true for subtraction or division, but for addition or multiplication, it actually doesn't matter what way round it is. So if we apply that formula now, we know if we do 3 lots of 4, that's going to give us 12, but that would be the area of a rectangle, so we need to remember to half it. So area equals a half times 4 times 3. You could also do 4 times 3 or 3 times 4 in either order. They will both give you 12. So 4 times 3 is 12, divided by 2, or halved, will give you 6. You could also do a half times 4 first as well. So a half of 4 is 2, and 2 times 3 is 6. So you can see here it actually doesn't matter what order you perform the calculation in, because you're multiplying each time, and hence it doesn't overly matter what order you do in. This next one, you need to be a bit more careful, because it says here you must always use the perpendicular height. So perpendicular is a word I recommend you know. It's when it forms a right angle. So we want to use this height here for this slanted height of 5 is actually no use when it comes to this calculation. So using the formula, we have to do a half times 6 times 4. Notice how we've not included the 5 anywhere. So regardless of what order you do this in, if I do 6 lots of 4, that is 24, and then half of that is 12. Or I could do a half of 6 is 3, then 3 lots of 4 is 12. So either way, I'm going to get an answer of 12 centimeters squared. Notice how it's squared again, because this is a 2D problem. We're working in the second dimension. So the next one's going to be a parallelogram, and pay close attention to the animation that comes up straight away. So you can see here how that triangle has slanted from here, the left, over to the right. And the reason I've done that is because if we look at where the triangle was originally, it forms a rectangle. So that hopefully shows you why this formula works. The area of a parallelogram is actually the same formula as if you was doing a rectangle, because we can see here how we've got the same area. The triangle has just been slanted to the right. So again, if we use that formula, base times height, for a rectangle, we can use it for a parallelogram as well. You might say length and width, either way, as long as you're clear what 2 lengths you are using, you'll be fine. But let's do a little bit of practice. So this first one, we've only got 2 lengths given to us here. So again, from instinct, we probably will do 5 lots of 3 or 3 lots of 5. Area equals 5 lots of 3 or 3 lots of 5, and that will give you 15 centimeters squared. However, in this second diagram, we've got to remember to use the perpendicular height again. So just have a quick think of what height you're going to use. We've got the 7 and we've got the 9, but one of them we're not going to use to help us find the area. If you thought that we need to use the 7, then you are correct, because that's the perpendicular height, the height that goes straight up, also makes a right angle. 9 is the slanted height, and we don't want to use that in our area calculation. So this one here, we're going to do area equals 2 lots of 7, and that will give us 14 centimeters squared. The next shape we're going to have a look at is a trapezium. So again, in this animation, you can see how that second shape is sliding over to the right. So it says to find the area of a trapezium, we take a parallelogram and we divide it by 2. So if we merge those 2 trapeziums back together, we would form a parallelogram. And then this height here would be A plus B, the total of A and B. And we would times it by our height. So this gives us the formula for a trapezium. Area of a trapezium is A plus B times by height, or divided by 2. Again, it doesn't matter necessarily if you divide by 2, half it is another way of saying that, and then times by the height, or whether you do it the other way round. But hopefully from some other revision you've been doing, you will know that A plus B has to come first because it is in a bracket, okay? So you find the total of your 2 parallel sides, and you need to then half that and times it by the height. Also, a bit of a hint here, a trapezium is a 4-sided shape with 1 pair of parallel lines. A lot of people are not sure what a trapezium is, and hence they only apply the formula to very specific trapeziums. But if you've got a 4-sided shape, which is called a quadrilateral, and it's got 1 pair of parallel lines, not 2, 2 pairs is a parallelogram, but 1 pair is a trapezium, then you can apply this formula. Let's have a look at it in action. So here, this is a trapezium because I've got 1 pair of parallel lines. 5 and 7 are a pair of parallel lines that will never meet. And then I've got a height of 3 between them. So this is how we're going to perform the calculation. Going to identify the parallel sides, A and B. So A and B are the lengths 5 and 7. And the height between them is 3. We're going to substitute that into the formula. So area equals 5 plus 7. So 5 plus 7 is 12. Times it by 3 is 36. And then we need to remember to divide by 2. And that will give us 18. I'm just going to show you that it can work slightly differently as well. If I did 5 plus 7 is 12. And then divide by 2. That is 6. Then multiply by 3, I also get 18. So the most important thing is you need to remember that you have to add your parallel sides first. 5 plus 7 must come first, which is why it's in the brackets. And then you need to make sure that you multiply by the height and divide by 2. But that order of the last 2 things doesn't matter, but you must add your parallel sides together first. Let's do another one. So this is a trapezium as well, because we've got 1 pair of parallel sides, and hopefully you noticed that this example and the one before, and they did look slightly different, but they are both trapeziums, which is why I went through the definition. There is 1 length here which is no use at all, so see if you can figure out which one it is. So going through the steps, the parallel sides A and B and the perpendicular height. Emphasis the perpendicular height, so one of these heights is not perpendicular. Let's substitute into the formula. So if I had to guess, I would imagine you found it easier to identify what A and B is this time. So A and B are 5 and 8, but the perpendicular height is 4. Again, we want to use a height that goes straight up or would form a right angle. This 3 is a slanted height and is no use for calculating area. Might be useful for something else, but not for this formula. So area equals 5 plus 8 times by 4 divided by 2. This one's a little bit trickier because you've got a decimal in it. but 5 plus 8 is 13. 13 times 4 is 52, and then 52 divided by 4 is 26. So I said it's trickier because it's got a decimal in it, but I was actually thinking of it this way. 5 plus 8 is 13, and then 13 divided by 2 is 6.5, and 6.5 times 4 will give you 26. So again, you can see here how there's two different ways of getting your final answer, as long as you do the parallel sides added together first. But in one way, I had to consider decimals, and in the other way, I didn't. So knowing that fact that the order of the last two bits where you multiply by the height and divide by 2 is up to you. You can do that in what order you want to. Might make things easier so that you don't have to do decimals in your calculation. Subscribe to the channel for more LANTITE content and content which basically covers the entire Australian curriculum. And if you found this video useful, check out the one above where we go through more questions related to geometry.